Well, Matthew, I want you to tell us about the next song that we're going to play for the audience.
Okay. So that song represented his childhood, and now we move on kind of to his young adulthood. In 1830, when he was 21 years old, the Lincolns moved to Macon County, Illinois. Between Macon County, New Salem, and Springfield, Abraham would spend 31 years of his life in Illinois. He was a shopkeeper, surveyor, and postmaster, taught himself law, and traveled the 8th Judicial Circuit on horseback. He met and married Mary Todd and raised 4 sons together, and honed his political skills in the state legislature, served a single term in Congress, and skillfully defended his position against the expansion of slavery in a series of debates with a prominent politician, Senator Stephen Douglas. Now, coinciding with this time and Lincoln's rise to national prominence was the rise of blackface minstrelsy. Minstrelsy was America's most popular form of live entertainment in the 1840s and 50s. It was America's first uniquely theatrical form and one of its first industries of culture. It featured music and comedy skits performed primarily by white men made up with burnt cork to appear black, but it was marketed as an authentic representation of African American culture, which it wasn't, but it was influenced to varying degrees by authentic African American culture. The blackface characters generally portrayed African Americans in comic exaggerations, which led historians to determine that the form was little more than an example of the prevailing racist attitudes in antebellum America. But today, scholars, are finding a lot more depth to it and a lot more complexity and nuance that, along with expressions of race, minstrelsy embodied ideas of class struggle and misogyny. And while it often reduced African Americans to stereotypes, the success of the entertainment form was an indication of the genuine interest of working class white men in the music and culture of blacks.
Sure.
And Abraham Lincoln was no exception in his love for minstrel shows and songs. He would pass up a chance at almost any other type of entertainment to attend a minstrel performance. So this is a song written for the minstrel stage. It's called Old Dan Tucker. It's still performed today by various people. And Lincoln had shown a preference to this song during his lifetime. It was written by one of the first and greatest of America's black-faced minstrels, Daniel Decatur Emmett. And we recorded it with somewhat traditional minstrel instrumentation, which was a group consisting of a banjo, a fiddle, bones carved from cow rib bones for the percussion, and tambourine.
You'd mentioned something about the banjo. Elaborate on that just a little bit.
The banjo, we use this here, and it's throughout the album, but we use it on a spiritual later on, because the banjo is an instrument that is rooted in Africa. There were various antecedents to the banjo in Africa, and it came here with people in slavery and was pretty much exclusively played by African Americans until the early 1800s, and that's when some white European musicians started to pick it up, and that's why it became prevalent in the minstrel shows.
All right, thank you. Well, let's go ahead and play Old Dan Tucker.
Came to town the other night, I heard the noise and saw the fight. The watchman was running round, crying, "Old Dan Tucker's come to town." So get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, Old Dan Tucker, you're too late to come to supper. Tucker is a nice old man, he used to ride our Derby Ram. You send him whizzing down the hill, if he hadn't got up, he'd lay So get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to come to supper. Here's my razor in good order, Magnum Bonum, I just bought her. Sheep shell oats, Tucker shell corn, I'll shave you soon as the water gets warm. Now get out the way, get out the way, get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to come to supper.
Matthew, you and the band, you guys really do a great job with so much of this music. But, gosh, old Dan Tucker, I could see why that is so popular or was so popular. You just can't sit still listening to that song. Your feet got to move.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to give a little background on the next song, Lincoln and Liberty.
All right.
Thank you. At the 1860 Republican Convention in Chicago, Abraham Lincoln won his party's nomination for President of the United States. In 19th century America, hardly a presidential candidate won an election without having his name linked to liberty in a song. Jesse Hutchinson, Jr. of New Hampshire's famous Hutchinson Family Singers wrote the lyrics to Lincoln and Liberty and set them to the tune of Rosin the Bow, an Irish melody. It's one of the most parodied in folk music. The Hutchinson Family Singers traveled the country singing anti-slavery and pro-union songs, frequently at Lincoln's campaign appearances. Later in the White House as well. So Lincoln and Liberty became Lincoln's official campaign song in 1860 and was published in the book The Hutchinson's Republican Songster, which was used at rallies everywhere. On November 6, 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected the 16th President of the United States. He bid farewell to friends and supporters in Springfield on February 11, 1861, and boarded a train bound for Washington. By the time he took office on March 4, 1861, his publicly stated belief that slavery was a moral, a social, and a political wrong prompted the Lower South to secede from the Union and form the Confederate States of America in an effort to protect their peculiar institution. When Confederate forces attacked a United States military installation at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina, on April 12, 1861, the Civil War had begun. So now let's listen to Lincoln and Liberty.
Hurrah for the choice of the nation, our chieftain so brave and so true. We'll go for the great Reformation, for Lincoln and liberty too. We'll go for the son of Kentucky, the hero of Hoosierdom through. The pride of the sucker so lucky, for Lincoln and liberty too. They'll find what by felling and mauling our railmaker statesmen can do. For the people are everywhere calling for Lincoln and liberty too. Then up with the banner so glorious, the star-spangled red, white, and blue. We'll fight till our banner's victorious, for Lincoln and liberty too. David's good sling is unerring, the slave-ocrat giant he slew. Then shout for the freedom preferring, for Lincoln and liberty too. We'll go for the son of Kentucky, the hero of Hoosierdom through. The
Matthew, that the tune is very familiar to me. Not the words to the song, but the actual melody or the tune. Rousing the Bow. It must have been used very often. In fact, I think it was used here locally in the Seattle area for a restaurant commercial that I've been listening to for 10 or 12 years.
Really?
Very
that
familiar.
Makes sense. That makes sense. It was used in a lot of other folk songs. One in particular, I think, is the Washington. It's called "Acres of Clams."
That's
Old
the one I'm
Settler
talking
song.
about, actually.
So
Yeah,
that also,
exactly.
That goes back to the same period, maybe the late 19th century, mid to late 19th century, Acres of Clams.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into the next tune. Matthew, go ahead and tell us about that song.
Okay. The next song is an African-American spiritual, one of the religious songs of people in slavery. Now, Lincoln had always opposed slavery, been morally opposed to it, but he made it clear that saving the Union was his overarching goal in the Civil War. Opinion was divided in the North as to whether or not emancipation was a good idea, and Lincoln was afraid that it could cause some northern border states to join the recession. When he became convinced that freeing slaves in the states that were in rebellion would damage the Confederate war efforts, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation invoking military necessity. After he signed the document on January 1st, 1863, Lincoln stated, "I never in my life felt more certain that I was doing right than I do in signing this paper." So this song was chosen because Lincoln and his wife Mary and their son Tad spent summers from 1862 to 1864 at the Soldiers' Home, a cottage on a hilltop about 4 miles from Washington. And there was a woman there who was a cook at Soldiers' Home named Mary Dines. She had escaped slavery in Maryland and was living in a nearby camp for escaped slaves. And she has reported that on at least one occasion, the Lincolns visited this camp where she and others prayed and sang spirituals. Dines recalled that after they sang "Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen," she saw the president wiping the tears off his face with his bare hands. So this is one that's also still fairly well known today. It first appeared in a book in 1867 when some white scholars had collected African-American songs and spirituals in the Sea Islands off the coast of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, and they found this song there, and it was printed in that book. And so this one also is performed on the banjo, just banjo and vocals, for "Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen."
Thank you, Matthew.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows the Jesus. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.